All right, and we are live for
Nice.
another. So me and Starfleet Boy, we've decided to call this block of live goodness TGIQ, or no, wait, TQIF.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. It's Friday.
I like it.
But
Q, I'm sure appreciates the shout out.
Well, originally it was going to be TTG. Wait, the Great Bird of the Galaxy, whatever that was. I had it figured out, but I've forgotten.
Yeah, I like the brevity of Q. I'll run it past our sample audiences, and we'll give it a test drive.
Okay. Well, I see we have some people watching, so we're going to go ahead and get started.
Nice.
I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 111th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. I think that's 8 in binary, right? 111, 111th.
I'm going to leave that one to Brian.
I don't remember how to work it out, and even when I did know, I had to use a piece of paper and a pen.
And I know I was going to be playing.
We have a
playing Myst tonight.
But we are the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And tonight, Dave, Brian, and I have reassembled to discuss Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 3, Temporal Edict, written by Dave Ihlenfeld and David Wright. So written by the two Daves. And directed by Bob Suarez.
I always appreciate a show that makes the Dave approval.
Do we have any info on these writers? Do they have any connection to sci-fi or Trek?
I'm not familiar with any of those creatives.
We'll have to see if they turn up enough to impress us.
Well, we're just gonna go ahead and kick things off by each one of us giving an opening statement, just our general impressions of the episode. I guess I'll go ahead and go first, but I think it's kind of dumb to rank these episodes when there's only 3 so far, but this one
What are your top 3?
But this one is my favorite. I love some of the things they did here. The TOS flavor, this one felt a little bit more original series mixed in with their next generation stuff, and me being a big TOS fan, I loved that. I love that it told a relevant labor issue related story, because I like Star Trek being a show set in the future about today. I loved pretty much everything with the away team story. I loved the stuff that happened on the ship, even though it got a little too silly for me, the way it kind of escalated the threat and de-escalated the threat. And I'll talk more about that, but I almost feel like that's one of the things the show probably could have done better if it was a 44-minute show, not like a 22, 23-minute show. But other than that, I really dug everything. And I liked seeing the characters kind of mixed around a little bit. We got to see a Mariner and Ransom story, and not just another like Mariner and Boimler together story. And I liked that Mariner didn't win the day in this episode. It was more of a Ransom victory and Boimler victory. And I kind of liked that, showcasing some other people. But Mariner continues to be a favorite character of mine, and I'm still feeling really good about this show. But whoever would like to go next?
Brian, it's you.
Okay. Thank you for informing me that I would like to go next. I have to echo some of that. I think this is my favorite episode so far. I don't think it's actually the funniest so far, but I do think it's my favorite. For some of the reasons you mentioned, many of the reasons you mentioned, this was the first one where I could feel fairly confident that I was actually watching Star Trek. Which was something I wasn't really feeling that confident of when I was watching the other first two episodes, despite the fact that they were clearly doing some excellent cosplay. This time it felt like Star Trek for basically the reasons Fatheree already outlined, that there was actually some meaningful social commentary. There was actually some character development and people stepping out of their cartoon stereotypes. And yeah, I mean, mostly just that, but that was enough to make me feel some of the Star Trek goodness that I wasn't really sure if I was getting in those first two episodes. So I guess I'll go into details when we get to those parts of the episode.
I'm here to kill the buzz and be the hater. No, when I saw the first episode, I was worried, or even before the first episode, that I just wasn't going to be able to plug into it, that the characters were going to be kind of painted too broadly, and that the kind of mile a minute jokes would kind of just not be my thing. And I feel like with each successive episode, that has felt more and more the case. Like the first episode was my favorite, while I was kind of, I think, coasting on the novelty of it. But yeah, I can't say I'm like laughing or really enjoying it a lot. I kind of find the characters sort of all unlikable, and I've laughed a few times. And I like the theme of this episode. I think it's a good theme, although I think that Boimler is kind of like an unlikable delivery device for it. But I did find myself thinking a little bit of feeling myself in the shoes of Captain Terrell when the thing started really going off in his head, and he was like, so I wasn't super into it, I guess. That is my take. That's my short take.
Well, okay, we're gonna have some interesting conversations then.
Yes, no doubt.
People are here to hear from us, so
yes.
I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the story a little bit. I'm going to give you the synopsis that's from the website Memory Alpha, and then I'll kind of expand upon that with some spoilers. A new work protocol eliminating buffer time has the Cerritos crew running ragged as they try to keep up with their tightened schedules. Ensign Mariner and Commander Ransom's mutual lack of respect comes to a head during an away mission. And just to expand on that with spoilers a little bit, basically the captain finds out that the lower decks on the ship are padding their work times Scotty style, as we learned on the TNG episode Relics. And she puts everyone on strict quotas and time management. And Ransom and Mariner have a very TOS style adventure with spear wielding aliens and trial by combat.
Before we dive any further into the episode, real quick question, because I don't work a normal type job. A comic shop is way too weird for that. Do people actually use the term buffer time or anything like that? I didn't know if it was a real thing.
I've never used that term, but I am definitely familiar with that concept.
Oh, yes.
Sure. I think the concept is pretty universal, and the way sort of management is very sort of unaware of sometimes the best way to be efficient and to while still keeping employees motivated. So yeah, I get the idea. I just wondered if it was a term that was around.
I haven't looked it up on Urban Dictionary, but I assume this was an attempt to give it a Star Trek-y type name that
right.
like pattern buffers and stuff. It's got this kind of technobabble veneer to it.
Well, for the story to work for the captain to be unfamiliar with it, it would kind of have to be an original term that these writers came up with, I think.
That makes sense. The Scotty reference. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I had one question, I guess. all of these senior officers were once lower decks officers. Didn't they all go through their buffer time period of their lives?
Unless this is a new tradition that Scotty brought back to the 24th century.
Jesus.
All right.
So I've always hated that they sort of tried to make, I guess, canon what seemed to me to be a joke in Star Trek 3 and sort of diminished Scotty by sort of saying that he never have ever liked it. So them bringing that back as kind of a thing in this, that was like, I guess, getting off on a bad foot for me.
You sound like a supervisor as opposed to one of the peons.
I like Scotty the miracle worker, the guy who was certainly not doing it to manipulate Kirk, but who just redoubled his efforts and could come through in a pinch, even though he was scared he wouldn't be able to. Like, basically everything in TOS was very sincere Scotty, or at least kind of panic mode. I can't do that. Well, let me try and see if I can. So yeah, when Relics had him, like, say, like, no, this is what I do, I lie, I was like, fuck that.
He doesn't lie. It's creative estimating.
Whatever.
I actually understand where Dave is coming from, and I can see how that kind of diminishes the Scotty the miracle worker. But
Yeah.
I forgive it because I just love the juxtaposition of Scotty and Geordi in that episode, and Scotty being the more fun engineer. But
it's an episode I actually want to revisit because it's been a good long time since I've seen it, and see if it has grown on me a little bit more or not. I know that part probably won't, but I think I may enjoy other elements more. So we'll see.
Well, we'll save that for if we ever get to discuss TNG season 6. But we'll just go ahead and talk about Temporal Edict, kind of break it down, not quite scene by scene, but we'll start with the opening moments before the credits when we get the traditional now cold opens on the show that they do. Kind of each episode has its own little gag scene. This is the first one that I actually liked. I loved this one. So I always thought this was kind of a neat idea and concept. I haven't really enjoyed the execution until now. But it starts off with very much kind of poking fun at TNG with like the concerts,
It's sort of the hoity-toity entertainment.
Yeah, where Boimler is playing some like Celtic folk music on a violin, and he's actually like river dancing at the same time. So always the overachiever. And then, like the thing that Dave, I know you and I have discussed this a lot, but like, why do people in Star Trek only listen to like classical music, and all the pop cultural references are like from at the latest early 20th century. So I like seeing something like a little bit more contemporary with Mariner coming in with the guitar and rocking out.
She basically came out as a extra from Scott Pilgrim's Battle of the Bands. That was very much the tone of it. I gotta say, it's one of those things. I sort of feel like TNG could use some spoofing of its sort of hoity-toity mannerisms, but the kind of like, you're a nerd and rock rules is kind of an obnoxious way to do it, in my opinion. It just I did not like the opening there. Once again, kind of Mariner just, I don't know, being a kind of an obnoxious jerk to him, while at least he's he obviously is trying. I know it's a comedy, but it's such an 80s kind of Revenge of the Nerds tropey thing.
Well, I mean, she waits until he finishes his song. She doesn't try to ruin his performance.
Yeah,
she just
decides to. She like kind of shove him out of the way when he's just about to start another number.
Yeah, but he
finished Essence of a Hug, and then he was about to start Requiem for a Hug, which no one wanted to hear in that bar. And if she hadn't cut him off, she would have been the asshole.
Well, also, to be fair, nobody in the crowd liked her music either. I noticed the crowd was singularly unimpressed with everything that happened on stage. I thought that was kind of interesting. An interesting choice.
The best reaction came from the Klingon captain. He was like, "What is the meaning of this intense bass?"
Yeah, that was pretty good. I also sort of liked. I'll give this. I sort of liked Tendy's kind of crazed look on the drums.
Mm-hmm. She was killing it.
Kind of wild-eyed and like nutty looking. Let's see. There it is.
Cool.
Super intense. sense.
But I loved Captain Freeman's response to the Klingon when she says it must be something on your end, and then like the Klingon like threatening to kill his chief engineer.
I would think Klingons would be into sort of heavy duty music like that.
Yeah, that is kind of what Klingon opera has sounded like.
I guess it was talking over him was really what he didn't like.
Well, he says like, "Are you trying to intimidate me?" So I heard a suggestion that from Kit Walski, the YouTuber Kit Walski, that maybe he thought it was like boss music, like she was trying to get in a boss fight with him or something, like a video game. But this is the type of Star Trek in jokes that I want them to do, because to me, like it feels like when Lower Decks is like poking fun at something like the musical concerts when they would play Mozart or stuff on the Next Generation. I feel like they're not really like making fun of Star Trek. It's more of like you're kind of teasing. You're part of the family, like teasing another family member, and it's like an in joke that everyone knows and laughs at. I like that. It warms my heart.
As a Doctor Who fan, anytime you introduce something very anachronistic into Star Trek, I usually enjoy it. So having big, heavy, hard music like that was fun for me.
Yeah, Brian's,
I think it's kind of
on that.
When I was watching TNG back in the day, I think I thought, man, all this hoity-toity music is kind of annoying. But it's one of those things that in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, if I was some kid who was like in orchestra or whatever back in the day, I'd probably think, oh, that's actually kind of cool. Nerds made good. And I sort of always appreciated that Trek sort of spotlighted the nerds made good. So I think that's why even though I wasn't one of those band kids, I almost like feel for him a little bit. And like, when someone basically kind of tries to make him look lame and she's like, I don't even care what this song is. It's, it feels a little bit more mean-spirited to me. It's like they were trying to kind of dump on the TNG a little bit. I know it's a goofy ass comedy. I probably shouldn't take it quite so seriously, but
I think it's clear that the show is utterly in love with the Next Generation. So I wouldn't take that as, I wouldn't interpret it as mean-spirited.
No, I've come across this sort of in comics before. I remember the writer Matt Fraction, and he's a guy who I feel like he always does a kind of tongue-in-cheek, ironic meta approach when he does superheroes, where he's kind of like, isn't this a crazy world? I'm going to throw in every nutty thing there is and just show what a crazy world superheroes live in. And I believe he's very sincere in his love for superheroes, but it's the way he expresses it that always feels kind of ironic and meta to me. And like, there's something about it it doesn't click for me. So I think this is like on that same space, for me at least.
Well, let's get into, after the credits, the kind of the two storylines. We have the stuff on the ship that will eventually split off into like an away mission and some chaos on board the Cerritos. But we start off with the ship is on its way to Cardassia Prime, which at first made me like really excited because I want to see like the post DS9 Cardassian stuff. And then I got like really nervous because I was like, oh no, this will like spoil it for Dave who hasn't finished watching Deep Space Nine yet. So I was kind of relieved when they get the call from the Admiral that they're not going to the peace talks on Cardassia Prime. And this kind of like starts the plot of Captain Freeman having a chip on her shoulder. She's bitter that she lost out on this assignment. She feels like the ship isn't getting respected. She throws her pad at the view screen, actually. And meanwhile, down in the brig, our lower deck quartet are having some shenanigans testing out the force field on the brig. One of the funniest jokes from the trailer of the show was the Mariner shooting the phaser at Boimler and not realizing the setting on it.
And it was still funny this time through as well. I still laughed.
But yeah, this kind of sets up the idea. They have to explain to Tendi, her being the point of view character, and she's kind of created to be from the first episode. They explain to her the concept of padding their work time, Scotty style, so that their, not, the expectations are lowered and they have easier work days, I guess. And they have time.
While we're on this frame, real quick, why does Tendi have the white boots?
That's all the medical and science division in this show have the white boots.
Okay. I've noticed it each time when you're running these, and I just keep forgetting to ask.
If you're watching this live or checking it out on YouTube or Facebook later, we have a screenshot of the group enjoying their margaritas, frozen, salt, I like that they order it like the Earl Grey or something.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, everybody else has the sort of more traditional Starfleet black boots, all with sort of linings in whatever their department colors are. But there's Tendi with her crazy, what look like Arctic boots, but I guess are medical boots.
It kind of ties into the white medical uniforms of Star Trek Discovery. I kind of like that it brought some Discovery into the canon a little bit more. But yeah, then Tendi actually gets to like test out the buffer time on Dr. T'Ana. And when she's like, Tendi, how long will it take you to recalibrate a bio bed? And she's like, 5 hours. And then Dr. T'Ana is like, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like this scene because Blemler actually loosens up a bit in this scene.
Yes.
Yeah, he proclaims his distaste for buffer time, but then says, well, I got to go with the crowd. And when in Rome, and takes the drink. And I was like, that's nice to see another side of him. So.
No, that's a lot of what I appreciate in this episode, was seeing another side to him. And he is slowly getting the stick out of his ass. I'm okay with it being a slow burn, a slow arc. Yeah. I don't want them to rush things, but I'm glad that they are moving that overarching story along a little bit. But then the captain is kind of on the war path, and I kind of liked her pointing out that the people walking slowly in the corridors, like a lot of the extras on Next Generation, or sometimes it's like, we have like these giant sets, but we only have like 10 actors, so we need you to like walk through, or 10 extras, so we need you to walk around very slowly, so you stay on screen longer.
Well, that was probably a side effect of Roddenberry wanting to say that everything is calm and smooth on Picard's Enterprise, and there's almost never any excuse for tension or physical stress. I think that was actually part of his mandate. So I'm guessing that was a part of that. And then once it kind of got baked into subsequent Star Trek, I'm sure if Ron Moore had made The Next Generation, there would have been all sorts of, naval guys running down corridors just because they're late for something or they've got to get something else done. And, but.
Yeah, they need to go and take. I don't not to spoil the end, but like they maybe need to go and introduce Boimler time to the Kelvin verse. Those guys are always at a sprint.
It's called the Boimler effect.
Yeah, Boimler effect. Yeah.
Yes.
Those they could be like, could you just deliver the ship's log to computer room? And they'd be like,
Yeah.
Oh, they run a little bit on Discovery too. Like I like Spock and Burnham running down the corridors to go build the Red Angel suit.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, it's we've talked about this when we talked about the Kelvin movies. It's one of the innovations that was kind of good. Literally, it just kind of visually energized Star Trek to have them feel so go-getter that standing still was kind of not the norm for them.
Essentially, what happens is the captain overhears someone mention buffer time, and then when she is in the turbo lift with Boimler, and I liked his awkwardness here where he says, Captain. It sounded funny, but kind of like a realistic funny, like this really awkward people.
It was how he pronounced the word. He pronounced it like informally.
Yeah, it's like he didn't get it right the first time, so he did a redo, a mulligan on that.
Yeah.
But
I want to say, when he's in the elevator at first, isn't he singing or humming the Next Generation theme song?
Yeah.
So that song exists in Star Trek. Is this the first time we've ever?
I don't know that I would say that it does.
I mean, it could exist. Like that could be like a song that's in like some popular like holo novel or something, or it could just be something he put together in his head and was humming.
So all of Star Trek,
I'm like, it's a comedy that they just did a little joke.
Well, why does it hurt anything? I know, Dave. I know you like the movie Solo. They put the Imperial March into the other Star franchise.
Did they?
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, they have the promotional sign up to the Empire, and they actually play the Imperial March.
Yeah.
And it's pretty strongly implied to be part of the advertisement.
Super aware of that. I'm not super into it.
But
I think it's fine for these things to exist in universe. They would just have like a different meaning. Like no one would hear that and think it's the Next Generation theme. It's just like some random piece of music.
The first implication is if Blemler made it up, then all of the Next Generation happens inside Blemler's head, much like all of Deep Space Nine can be said to happen in some heads.
I don't think that's the case either. I think that someone within the Star Trek universe could have imagined those notes of music in that arrangement without having to imagine like an entire show.
I will
now as I recall,
it's possible, but to me, it's the nerdiest thing conceivable to try and figure out how it fits. Because I think it was just a gag.
I think in the original series,
there's no reason for it not to just be a piece of music in there. Like
it just
in the original series, they did Conscience of the King. They have the TOS theme playing.
Yes,
in the background.
At a party or something. They have a jazz version of the TOS theme playing.
Franchise precedent going back to 1966.
Yeah.
If it gets your rocks off, it's all you, baby.
I'm kind of okay with it, but I feel the song needs to be connected to Starfleet in some way. I don't know what that way should be, but if it exists in Star Trek land, it has to somehow connect to Starfleet. It can't just be some song from a selling cornflakes or something. So.
Let's sell those stupid triple cereal.
Yeah.
But this is where Boimler spills the beans to the captain because, of course, he's not going to be able to, talk his way out of that. So basically, buffer time has ended. A new memo goes out, and they're all given like these Jellicoe-esque work quotas.
And suddenly everyone works at Amazon.
Yes. So very, very topical, very relevant. In fact, I've been experiencing a little bit of this at my job, in my workplace, that I don't think any of my bosses listen to Tex-Trek, but if they do, this episode is what I feel like.
They need to know that they've got a mariner on their hands.
But this is, in a weird way, this is kind of the first time we really see Boimler shine in the show, where he's
yes.
Oh yeah, like I love being like overworked and having to overachieve. And
he doesn't just love it; he's actually good at it. He's keeping up and getting things done before the quoted times. He's actually excelling in this environment, which I thought was a nice touch because it does show that Blemler's a bit of a badass. It does give some reason to say, why is this guy in Starfleet? Oh, because he actually can get a whole lot of shit done quickly.
Yeah.
Far more quickly than most people, just about anyone else on the crew, on the ship. So they imply.
For the first time, the story found a way to play to his strengths, and it was it made me happy to see him happy.
Yes. It also I just liked seeing that there was something he's good at. There's some reason we should it's something, some reason that everyone puts up with his annoying habits. So
space,
I generally find Boimler as insufferable as the rest.
And we also have well, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was going to say, like, is he basically excelling at anything other than kind of minor paperwork and checking off lists and stuff? It didn't seem like a super vital job. I know degaussing the whatever the radar dish or whatever is needs to get done, but
it was lots of different things, which implies lots of different skill. Even if is busy work, which it kind of has to be busy work, or at least a lot of it has to be busy work, because apparently the ship was running just fine without getting all this extra stuff done last week. And so this is on some level busy work that the captain has concocted to fill up everyone's schedules.
Thematically, that fits with what the story, the kind of the theme that they wanted to tell on the show too.
Yeah.
Well, let's separate the saucer of our ship and kind of split the story apart right here. And we'll talk about the away mission to, Gelrock 5. And we'll talk about all the stuff that goes on there with Mariner and Ransom. And then we'll talk about the stuff that happened back on the Cerritos. Cerritos. I hear people say that ship name wrong so often that it's starting to make me say it wrong.
Say it right for me again.
How's it being mispronounced?
Sorry, Cerritos. Kind of like Doritos.
Isn't that what it is? Cerritos?
Cerritos. Like you'd say kind of like C-A-R, because it's a Spanish E, so it's like Sar, and then it's Etos.
Cerritos.
Cerritos.
I don't know what the
Cerritos.
What's the wrong one?
I'm not going to say it because it's going to throw me off again.
Okay.
Look,
I guess as long as people aren't saying the like chorito or something like that, Cerritos. That's how we're going to say it. That's how we're going to say it in Texas. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, we have our own way of pronouncing a lot of Spanish words most of the time.
And it ain't good. It's not pretty.
But we get more Commander Ransom here. And this is a character that I've been kind of unsure of in the previous episodes. He was a guy that I was kind of nervous about because he kind of seemed to me like he would be almost kind of a parody of a Commander Riker type. And I guess in some ways he is, but they give him redeeming qualities in this episode much more than I was expecting. That kind of caught me off guard in a very good way. And now I find him a very likable character that I enjoy watching.
And they do that deliberately. They deliberately establish a stereotype just so they can pull the rug out from under us near the end. So
yeah, it was well written. Yeah. But him and Mariner, they established like a little bit of tension, because she is kind of the slacker. She's the bad kid in class.
Well, and Riker would just blow Mariner out in airlock. So I can.
With how it is similar to Riker and when Ensign Rowe first comes aboard.
Yeah, only Rowe was nowhere near as obnoxious as Mariner.
That stood out to me when he's like, roll your sleeves down, and she like doesn't roll her sleeves down, and like that was like, oh, that was like intentional. They bring that back at the end of the episode. I still don't know where these shuttles come out of the ship, like where the shuttle bay is. It looks like it just kind of appeared out of the other side of the saucer when it was showing up on screen.
They beam the shuttles into space.
I guess. I'd love to see like the shuttle bay doors, but one of the things I like that they're doing is they kind of expand on some of these background characters. We keep seeing the same background characters again and again every episode. So I like that they designed all these character models for like their entire ship, and we're just going to see those same faces. Like this Bolian ensign Vendome, who's laughing at Commander Ransom's jokes on the shuttle, and it's kind of a kiss ass. We saw him in the first episode. He might have been in the second episode too. And by the way, for our Gorn eggs, I'm not going to point out like every time there's a Bolian on the ship. Like if we've seen it one time, I'll call it out the first time, and that's it. After it's like established in the show, I'm not going to bring it up again. So I'm not every time Vendome shows up, I'm not going to be like, there is a Bolian on the away team.
We got to pad our count, Fatheree. We need to hit a quota.
This show is going to make it pretty easy to hit any, even one of Captain Freeman's quotas. We'd be able to hit it. What do y'all think of Galrock 5, the crystal planet with kind of like the crystal gimmick? Everyone was really into crystals.
I thought it was fun enough.
I like there's a certain fetishization, I think that's how you say it, of crystals in the world of science fiction and fantasy. We like love
time crystals.
Yeah, time crystals, dilithium crystals, magic crystals.
The New Age movement in the 70s has a lot to answer for.
Yeah, and so lightsabers have crystals. There's fake crystals in the phasers for the emitter crystals.
The dark crystal.
Yeah. That's a whole movie based around the
first point, Brian. I didn't notice that, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, I was as a little kid, I was really into the crystal fetishization. I was like, "Yo, wow, glowy crystals are the best thing ever."
As a kid, did you ever do the Fortress of Solitude in Richard Donner's Superman was also a crystal thing.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I loved Luthor because he was always in the cartoons and stuff because he was always futzing around with kryptonite, which was usually depicted as a crystal. So
yeah.
So a whole planet of crystals and people who worship crystals kind of feels like a sort of a riff on a certain aspect of science fiction that normally doesn't get a spotlight directly shined on it, even though it's always there. So,
well, now the spotlight is shining on their those multifaceted crystals.
Yeah.
And this Bolian guy is about to screw things up.
Yeah. So Vendome fucked up because he was overworked, and instead of packing the honor crystal that the first contact team was given by these people, he packed the wooden fertility totem from their rival planet, which is like pissed them off because they're like, oh, it's like that perverted wooden sex thing from those assholes that we hate. That means war.
It did remind me a bit of the opening of Star Trek Beyond.
It is similar, except somehow less cartoony this time than in Star Trek Beyond. But this is where I liked it feeling more TOS. They start playing like the melodramatic TOS style music, and they have some spear wielding, spear throwing. We saw this in the trailer, but Vendome being wounded.
This is kind of the trope of old sci-fi. A lot of old sci-fi shows where you essentially meet a planet of primitives. I'm going to go ahead and put primitives in quotes. It's definitely kind of an old-timey version of it, white people version of it, imperialist version of it, but still good for a gag, I think, maybe. But they're the sort of easy to upset, very just sort of tribal culture people. It's been in sci-fi. By the way, they did have the funniest thing for me. The what do they call it? The adjudication geode.
Yes.
That was my favorite gag of the show.
Yeah, that was a laugh out loud moment for me.
And in retrospect, the first officer, what's the first officer's name? Ransom?
Commander Ransom.
Ransom. Okay. Ransom says before they leave, I'm bringing you because you're good with a phaser, which kind of hints that he knows that things could go horribly wrong, and I'm going to bring somebody who's a good shot with me. So even though he acts like he's, we're going to find a peaceful way out, some part of him was planning for a possible violent situation.
But didn't he doesn't want to use the phaser, right? She brings it up and he's like, no. He stops her
because she wanted to just stun everybody, which is what Brian pointed out to me, is like, why don't they just stun the bad guys all the time in Star Trek? Like, they have a stun setting. You can just stun them and then do whatever you want. We get that actiony stuff with Mariner, though, where I was a little bit confused how she was able to like leap in the air and then do that double punch, double kick thing. But maybe there's like low gravity on this planet. I don't know, but it would have looked really weird in live action.
To me, it was just kind of more of a little bit more of the Mariner is kind of good at all the stuff kind of things.
Yeah, is she a Mary Sue?
Maybe, I don't know.
Part of that like criticism of like being a Mary Sue, like I hear that about Michael Burnham a lot. It tends to be aimed towards woman characters, but one of the things is like, oh, you always like go rogue and do whatever and like never get in trouble for it. And I like that they don't do that with Mariner. Like they do show her face consequences when she goes rogue. At least
in this episode.
She is kind of an always right person, though. She's a little rough around the edges, but they usually portray her as having like a sort of deeper empathy, greater intelligence than the others. It's honestly, I hesitate to gender it with the Mary Sue. It's just, to me, it's just kind of an obnoxious character type, just as Boimler is kind of the opposite to me. Too much of the nerd tropes and stuff like that. It's actually just a little too much. That's all. But if you take away, kind of tend to paint stuff with a broad brush.
Yeah. If you take away all the sass and sarcasm, the rest of her enhancements or super abilities aren't that different than Kirk was in the 60s. Kirk was basically a big freaking Mary Sue in the 60s Star Trek.
But he was the captain of the ship and kind of, I guess, the expected role to do that. And these are kind of supposed to be the lovable losers or plucky underdogs, however they self-described in the first episode. So any of them being like really good feels a little weird.
And I like seeing it like someone who is like that kind of Kirk GBA, a general badass, who is kind of good at everything. But instead of being like the captain of their own ship where they have all the privilege and they have all the freedom and all the authority, what if you just like show that person as like an ensign who's like always like getting in trouble or being reprimanded?
Sure.
I like that shift.
We saw that. That was the first Kelvin movie.
Yeah, I like this more. I like Star Trek 09. I'm not an 09 hater. But like Lower Decks more than I like Star Trek 09.
This is the bit where I clocked on a little bit into. I last time I said she reminds me. Mariner has a lot of Jadzia Dax like tendencies. This massive breadth of experience and know-it-allism. But in this one, we see more of her fighting prowess, both in hand-to-hand combat, and apparently she's really good with a phaser. And combined together, I realized she reminds me a lot of Starbuck from New Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, especially her and Ransom here. They're kind of like Kara Thrace and Colonel Ty, except with some romantic tension.
Yes.
I don't think was there in BSG. I don't know. Maybe some people think that.
This may be me kind
I'm
of
sure there's
generally...
a fanfic somewhere.
This may be me generally not like being as big into comedies, or at least this kind of comedy, because I loved Starbuck on Galactica, and I thought she like maybe had a little bit more. But I think part of it is because there was a little more pathos built into the character, and her kind of showboating, I guess, sometimes had more immediate consequences. But I liked her cockiness more somehow than Mariner's. And I don't know if it's the difference between a live action actor and sort of a larger than life cartoon. It's stuff like one just appeals to me more than the other.
Yeah, the thing about Starbuck, I realized, and this was, I'm pretty sure, quite consciously part of the narrative in New Battlestar Galactica. She's this sarcastic, rebellious screw up. But when the chips are down and the Cylons are coming, Starbuck will go out there in her fighter or with her rifle and save everybody's life. And you put up with an asshole like that if they're going to keep saving your life. And the audience puts up with Starbuck's crap because she saves everyone's life. And she's like, oh, wow, when the chips are down, she will save everyone's life. And I was like, okay, maybe that's why everyone puts up with her, is because whenever there's a big crisis, Mariner saves everybody. And you just don't throw somebody like that in the brig or court-martial them.
I mean, that's why like Kirk can get away with like stealing the Enterprise and then going back in time on a bird of prey and stuff, because like he gets results, he gets it done for the greater good.
And it also helps if your mom's the captain, just like it helps if Kara Thrace, Starbuck's pseudo father, is the commander. So,
well, ironically, her mom isn't like exactly supportive. I guess it's just sort of that her position is what sort of somewhat backs Mariner.
I liked how the show kind of subverted its own tropes here. With we see Commander Ransom try to like talk his way out of the conflict with the Galrakians, and he ends up like getting hit in the balls with a wooden log that they hated, and then like electroshock.
It's ironic to get hit in the balls with a fertility log, by the
way. What's that going to do for your fertility? But it kind of makes it look like, oh, he's an idiot, and Mariner is going to have to get their asses out of the fire herself. But no, actually, like Ransom steals the show from her when they're locked up to have to do the trial by combat. Ransom tries to do a speech again, very like Kirk-like. You see him writing the speech on the kind of the wall of their prison. He's writing, "We may come from different worlds," and but when he tries to give the speech, like no one is listening to him. And the idea of like the tension between Mariner and Ransom coming from I think like the sexual attraction there. If you watch this a second time, like you definitely see it when they're having like some of these early conversations where they're yelling at each other, but you're kind of like dropping clues like they're into each other.
Right. And as always, when you show characters that close together, there's often meant to be some sort of romantic tension.
When they're both Rikering to each other, when he's given her the when she says permission to speak freely, and he's like, no one can stop you from speaking freely, and he strikes up the Riker lean, and then she does it also.
I did like that we finally have a figure in authority who directly calls her on her shit and says, you're a jackass and you cause problems and you don't follow orders. And it was nice just to see that somebody recognizes that she's obnoxious and calls her on it. Although
he doesn't seem to have any authority to sort of like make anything happen. That was a little weird.
Not when they're locked in a cell together.
By the end of this episode, he has her thrown in the brig.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Not to jump ahead.
Yeah, and he even brings it up. They even bring it up in the cell. Rank doesn't matter when we're locked up in this cell. I mean, yeah, but if you get out of here, it might.
I love his like sad response where she's like rank doesn't matter right now, and he's like, rank is all that matters all the time, or whatever he said. I think I have it written down in my notes. But we get the explanation of the Judification geode because crystals. Hashtag crystals. That's what I should have hashtagged on here.
I see Starfleet Boy has already coined the portmanteau for Mariner and Ransom as Maransom.
Oh, yeah. Nice. But I like that they have like some high stakes here. Like, the crew is going to die if they F this up. Again, felt a little bit more TOS where there's high stakes, dramatic stakes. A lot of times there would be like ticking clocks and stuff. I talk about a lot in the original series.
This episode had many literal ticking clocks.
Yeah, it did. Sure did.
Like timers, no less.
But they're fighting over who's going to go and face off against Vendor. And this is where I finally liked Ransom when she's again, it subverts its own tropes. She is showing him all of her scars, saying, I'm the one who does all the hard shit. I'm the one who's been through all of it, seen all of it. I'm the experienced one. I know how to basically solve every problem we're going to encounter on this show. Sometimes you got to break the rules. Sometimes you got to do the bad thing. And he's like, you know what? You're right. You do. And that's when he stabs her in the foot. He's not doing it in like an asshole way. He's doing it in kind of a heroic way where he's like, no, I'm your commanding officer. I'm responsible for you. I would rather die than let you go into danger.
It's a comedically heroic way, yeah.
It is, but
not to mention, do you know how much hell you catch if you come back without the captain's daughter?
I don't think he knows. I don't think
that's
anyone
true.
knows.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
But I love like the timing here. And I talked earlier how like this episode maybe could have used more time with the stuff going on the ship that we'll get to in a little bit. But for the most part, I think the 23-minute or whatever it is format really helps the show. And they're able to pack so much in. And I think they kind of have a good handle on the pacing by this point, 3 episodes in. I like right here, I love like the beat for beat where we get like the close up on his face. He's determined, and as stupid as it is, with him like ripping the shirt off, and then he's like, "Let's do this," and he kicks down the door and he goes off to face Vendor, and it was like I just turned on a dime there, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I like this guy. He's a cool Starfleet hero. I'm going to cheer for him." I was not expecting that.
See, I was expecting he was still going to get his ass handed to him in the fight, and Mariner was going to have to run out there and beat up the monster for him. So I was pleasantly surprised when he actually does really well.
Yeah, he got an extended kind of beat down with about 1 million homages to Kirk and basically the fighting style of TOS.
Yes. I like they took the time to show that he drops the sword. He's going to be non-lethal because he's Starfleet. And then when he like put his hands up to do the double fist punch, which me and Dave talk about a lot, is like the most powerful attack in all of Star Trek.
Yeah. Plus, you have a +5 bonus with it.
I was nervous because that's such a stupid way to hit someone. You would break every bone in both your hands if you hit someone like that. And I was scared that they were about to like make that joke because Brian, I was kind of thinking like, oh no, like they'll have him like get his ass kicked or something. Now that like I like the guy, they're gonna like ruin it right here. And they didn't. They had him like kind of like whip the shit out of this guy with a double fist punch. And I just love that, as stupid as it is, like that like respect for the double fist punch. It was so much fun to see.
The last Unicorn game, Star Trek role-playing game, had all these different martial arts you could pick. And one of them was clearly Kirk Fu with flying leg kicks and double fist punch and stuff as all the maneuvers that you got if you trained in this particular martial art. It was fun.
There's that Kirk Fu book that just came out. And Dave, remember when we escaped from the mirror universe? People can go back and watch that. It's on YouTube.
It's also in the credit sequence, or at least the highlight reel. Some of the highlight reel stuff is. Yeah, I still to this day, even though it makes me laugh when I watch our credits, I regret that we didn't refilm that with me doing a faster version where I risked actually wonking you on the head because it just looks too slow, and so I'll always regret
it looks a lot faster than Kirk doing it to the Gorn.
Yeah, I was about to say it looks like
Fatheree, I'm just saying I'd like to do a director's cut at some point. I want to do a George Lucas.
Faster, more intense.
Yeah, we'll have to revisit that. But like you actually say double fist punch when you punch the mirror universe Fatheree.
Yeah.
And I think Mike McMahon watched that because Ransom at one point says double fist punch. And
that's true.
It made me smile so hard when I heard that. Something stupid as it is. And Mariner was into this.
The thing where she's like biting her lower lip, trying not to let her loins take hold of her kind of cracked me up. And she's like, I'm not into it, and she's like,
when he's like hitting Vendor at Ransom is, and he's like, I respect your sovereignty, and then it cuts back to her, she's like, so ethical.
Which is a nice touch. It shows that not only does she have some sort of romantic interest, but she likes ethics. She has some sort of respect for the rules of Starfleet, even if she claims she doesn't. The Starfleet code actually does mean something to her, even if she wouldn't admit it when there's someone in earshot. But she doesn't know there's a camera there.
Arguably the whole first episode was about her sort of morality superseding Starfleet red tape. So
yeah, but here that's clearly a Starfleet code type thing he's doing, right. And she likes it. She approves. So it was a nice touch.
I see the question, rhetorical question. I think of isn't Vendor Hodor in space? They kind of addressed that in the show. That was from Stress Free K by revealing that yes, he's actually quite the intelligent guy for the hulking brute that he appears to be.
Yeah, Vendor seemed cool. I was like, oh man, you have like a shitty job having to like beat people up. I can tell that you were meant for bigger and better things. I hope that he would be a good Starfleet security officer. He should go to the academy.
He's clearly got more kind of going on up there than their leader, who's like obsession with crystals is clearly to their culture's detriment.
The voice of the leader sounded familiar. Is there somebody playing that leader that I should know?
I don't know. Those of y'all that are checking us out live, if anyone wants to look up who was the leader of the crystal folk, and let us know. The Galrakians. Yeah. But Ransom is the hero, and I was not expecting to see that.
Yep, and Mariner seems okay with that in the end. So.
Yeah, she seemed more than not the very end, but everything until the very end, she was very okay with it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about on the ship where the crew are under this hard ass tight schedule. We don't get much between Tendi and Rutherford. I did kind of regret not seeing more of them. That is, I guess, one of the downsides of the half-hour format as opposed to the full-hour format. But yeah, they're just being ran ragged. Everyone is miserable except for Boimler.
I was kind of thinking Tendi and Rutherford would do okay under all these time crunches because they seem like such go-getters. And the only way I was able to rationalize it is that they're too detail oriented and they're too meticulous and they can't move on to the next task until this one is perfect. And so they're not fast and that's causing them a problem.
Brian, I'm about to explain why I love you, because I think for someone to like be hung up on that, but to have to like come up with a way to explain it and then explain it so well speaks to you being very detail oriented like that.
Oh yeah, no.
It just got way meta in here.
Yeah, I can relate to the Tendi and Rutherford are probably my favorite characters. But.
It is funny that this scene kind of takes to a ridiculous extreme the sort of busy work time crunch management style that the captain is forcing on them. Such that either he's supposed to even be completing all this busy work, while they're literally under siege by alien invaders.
So that was where I have like a little bit of problems with the episode. And I think if they had...
Was it just too goofy for you, Fatheree?
It was like the way that they escalate up the threat and then the way that they de-escalate it later. And I think if they had the full hour runtime that most Star Trek episodes had, they could have done this a lot less silly. But especially when you have like people being worked to the point that they're like passing out at their stations. But overall, I enjoyed the episode enough that I can kind of, overlook some of that.
See, that was my downside, my bad on this episode, was specifically how the people are passing out, how she orders everyone to keep doing their busy work while the ship is being invaded. And I'm like, I just cannot imagine this happening in the same universe as Deep Space Nine or even Voyager, which could be a bit silly. I just cannot imagine this Starfleet existing next to that Starfleet. And I still can't. I just can't imagine it. Maybe this is some sort of dramatic adaptation of events that really happened or something, but
it's interesting that those kind of issues don't really chart for me, because that just seems to be the absurdist ingredient amount that they have on the show. I definitely take your point that if you kind of try and make it work together, if I were, saying that, I think in the first episode I said, if you kind of squint a little, you can imagine that most of the major events that take place in one of these episodes all happened as basically happened like they're shown, but like all the kind of details and comedic stuff was, from someone's retelling or whatever. And in this one, if you essentially, if in the retelling, the crew was just exhausted from long shifts, the week before, maybe not literally being forced to work during it, that would be the comedic tall tale version of it.
Or the other way to look at it that I thought of was that, like, well, maybe they're kind of expecting like the security teams like go and take care of this stuff. These people aren't, I guess, that big of a threat with their crystal spears.
Something that just popped into my head when we were talking. What if the whole series is how Mariner tells what happened? What if this is Mariner's version of what happened?
Yeah, it's going to end with her on the holodeck with Jonathan Frakes.
or whatever, sitting around a campfire or something with a bunch of kids or cadets.
I can see that
because that's why she looks so awesome, and why everyone else and there's so many jokes because Mariner loves jokes, and Mariner thinks everyone's a bit silly.
How I Met Your Mother of Star Trek.
I guess I haven't seen that show, but I'll assume you know what you're talking about.
Starfleet Boy said the invasion sequence reminded him of the bowel scene on Star Trek Discovery. And there's also, what was it? Star Trek Into Darkness? Like was it Star Trek Into Darkness where all of, I don't remember what they're called, but the bad guys and all the millions of little ships stick into the Enterprise and invade?
That's
Beyond.
Beyond.
That was in Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah.
What's that?
That was in Star Trek Beyond.
What did I call it?
Into Darkness.
Oh yeah, my bad.
I like that they were tagging the shit out of the ship, with, like all their crystal graffiti.
All right, I wasn't clear. Why do the shields fail?
Because Shax couldn't get them up in time. He couldn't find the right control in time.
I think there was maybe something that needed to be done even beyond just like finding the right control. It was like, something wasn't powered up or something like, that'd be clearly because of the busy work stuff.
I guess that I sort of assumed it must be the busy work has somehow caused the shields to fail, but I couldn't really see how or why. But I guess I just shrugged and said, well, nothing else makes sense. But so.
Do you think there's like any actual I'm sure there's not, but any intent behind the graffiti? Like, is it readable as an in-joke if you know the lexicon or anything like that? Spell out some naughty words?
I don't think so, because the only hint of it they give us is when Boimler seems to be able to translate a little bit of it, but there is so much stuff just wrote all over the screen.
It doesn't seem to be written in traditional words.
Like, it would be, if they were going to do that end joke, that would have been the point to where, Futurama used to do this with their fictional languages they would put on screen, and they would translate a little part of it, and then the audience could actually figure out the rest of it. But here it's not clearly labeled. There's so many characters and this alien language wrote on the wall. That he translates it to something like you tree loving root smoochers, I believe he says.
Right.
But there's no way to figure out like what characters were part of what word or anything like that.
I did enjoy the corridors being tagged because in my my Star Trek fan film I had the Doctor and Ace come on board from Doctor Who come on board the ship, and Ace graffitis up one of the walls of the corridors when she's bored and annoyed with the Starfleet people. And I was like, oh, just like in my fan film.
They're ripping us off all over the place.
Yes.
I guess root smoochers is a clever little analog to cocksucker.
I guess if you're a dirty-minded, terrible person, that would
somewhere in I think Stephen King's It, one of the horrible bully guy in that who's like actually like murderously horrible. When he beats up this is dark segue. He beats up some gay guys in this scene, or there's a scene related to it, and there's a guy who's like saying, he's like, how dare they insinuate that he sucked the root? That's like specifically how he phrases it, using root in that very specific sense.
That's not the most disturbing thing that Stephen King wrote in those books as far as like kids and sexuality goes, but I'll move past that. But this was fun for me to see Boimler on top of shit here when he's surrounded. I'm like, oh no, this guy's going to be a bumbling idiot. But he's like, no, wait a minute, I have a phaser, and these guys are lightweights, and he just takes them all down.
Yeah. And again, we see Boimler not being cowardly, as he was kind of implied to be a bit in the first episode.
Yeah,
so.
he's already had like a little bit of growth, and I think even like after this, when he goes to the captain and he tells her, look, not everyone is cut out for this. I can't believe I'm saying this because I actually really like it, but we need to come to our senses and let up on the crew. I think the Boimler of the first episode wouldn't have done that. He would have been like, no, I look really good right now. And I think just like the time he spent with Mariner is kind of like made him a little bit more open-minded about things not having to be so like by the book and regimented, that he's loosened up a little bit.
Well, more importantly, he is able to step outside himself and see the actual nature of the problem in a way that the captain can't even see. The captain can't even wrap her head around what is the actual problem here. And because they can't ask the right question, they can't find the right solution. And he's able to do that. So it does speak to a versatility in his mindset and his mentality that we haven't really seen a lot of. It's not something that you can just look up in a book easily.
And when Boimler comes onto the bridge and gets attacked by Shax, and then Shax is like, "Oh, never mind. I thought you were an intruder, but you're just that huffy ensign." I think he says, "Sorry, Blemler," which is, I think, Brian, that's how you say his name.
Oh, sorry.
Shax had my sort of one of my other favorite little comedic moments in the. One thing I did like in the cold opening was when he smashed the violin of
Captain says it's too loud.
Yeah,
and then
he's like, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, he's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry." Like Boimler's probably like losing sleep. He's like, I can't believe the captain thought I was too loud. Oh no, I'll never play my violin that loud again. But Shax had a cool moment here where he's holding all the people at bay at the turbo lift, and at one point he has like a spear in his mouth and like another like spear in his hand, like holding these people back. While Boimler is having, I guess this is kind of like the climax of the episode when the captain is convinced by Boimler that she was in the wrong, and then the crew is able to revolt against their invaders. But the whole time it keeps cutting back to Shax, and he's like, like, if we're coming up with some big resolution, like, now's the time.
Which is awfully meta, but
yeah. But they're doing a fair amount of meta on the show.
Yeah. It didn't. I was shocked at how little I was shocked by that line. How it didn't. It just fit right in, and I was like, "Wow, we really have fallen down the meta hole quite a ways." But
yeah, this is part of what I thought was a bit too silly. Of like the captain is just like, you know what, you're right. Everyone, just go ahead and break all the rules. Do whatever you need to do. And it's like, what rules were they following? I guess like they were trying to multitask and do their work assignments and try to like resist these attackers, but it as part of that, it's rushed for like the 23, 24. I think I say a different number every time, but whatever like that half-hour format is, it's just like kind of rush.
Yeah. It does shine the spotlight very direct. It allows them to shine the spotlight very directly on the issue because it's so broad and silly, in the same way that having your aliens be black on one side and white on the other is broad and silly. It allows you to very precisely pinpoint what the message of the story is. And since I really liked the message, I was kind of okay with that. And I'd already by this point just given up on the idea that somehow this really fits into some sort of the same universe as Voyager or Deep Space Nine or the Next Generation. But that ship had kind of jumped to warp by that point. But
it does, though. It's all canon.
Yeah, well,
it doesn't have to be in your head canon, though.
Yes.
That's up to you. That's up to the individual.
But this is why I felt like it was actually Star Trek, because they actually pick an issue which is far more complicated than just whether you time your employees. It's more than just micromanaging. It gets down to the whole root of authority structures in humanity. How much do you trust the people in the lower positions to do what they are supposed to do, and how much do you need to protect them from themselves? For the good of the community? Do you need lots of police? Do you need cameras? Do you need timers? Do you need welfare systems that say, okay, this is how many units of food you can buy. This is where your housing is. This is your public transportation. Or do you just hand the poor people a big hunk of money and say, fix your life? Do you trust them to be responsible or not? And this is a huge question that sits underneath a whole lot of human interaction, and I don't think Star Trek is really quite focused on it, at least not in the TV shows. I actually remember a Star Trek novel I read that focused on it. But
well, in a weird way, because they don't tend to dive in on like economic issues on Star Trek, I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't get addressed a whole lot. By the way, it was funny to me, Brian, that was some very good points there, but Fatheree, it cracked me up that you were cycling through a few images on there, including one where someone was using a pad to smash somebody in the face. And Brian is like, how do we treat the poor? How much agency do we give them? And it's like, smack.
Yeah. Well, it also applies to parenting and teaching with kids as well, where how much room do you give them to fail? How much, there's one, some people will like, well, just drop them out in the woods and see how they do. And, the fit will survive. And there's the other that smothers the kid under, and won't let them make any decisions or choices for themselves. And I don't know, where is the happy medium? Obviously it's somewhere in the middle, but that's a big issue that I don't think Star Trek's ever tackled. And yet it is fundamental to the human condition. And I was kind of glad to see, wow, this was actually about something they haven't done before, something that's vitally part of the human condition, and this was a fucking Star Trek episode. Yay.
And I felt like it worked within universe, like it is hard to do like a story about like people being overworked in a world where, to quote Picard, people work to better themselves and the rest of humanity. But I mean, like here, okay, like the captain has a chip on her shoulder. We've seen captains, we've seen Starfleet officers be hard asses before, so it does work, and it is something that's very relevant now that we're having discussions about like maybe we need to like reduce the work week to 30 hours a week so people have more time for other stuff, or maybe we need to introduce UBIs, and actually there's evidence to support like people are more productive that way and definitely have like a higher quality of life. So it is relevant. And also I like Discovery and Picard. I'm not hating on them, but with their season-long story arcs, they have a hard time doing focused episodes like this, and they
don't do many episodes where you could say this was clearly about this.
Yeah, I mean they do like broadly, like they've tackled things like xenophobia, and I'm
told that the Red Angel season was all about science versus faith, but it was kind of in that very broad way.
That's what we're told it was going to be, but I don't know.
They had to tell me though. I like it when there's a dude who's half black and half white, and I can figure it out.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with things in Star Trek being a little ham-fisted at times.
No, it's true. Like I like these Star Trek morality plays. I love them. It's a format I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping that they kind of return to on Pike, and that they did do on this. In fact, I get
World's going to do it.
I sort of I want I imagine this will kind of be something of a recurring theme, which it's such a big thing, as you kind of note, Brian, that it's not something that in a 25-minute thing you can do much more than sort of acknowledge and sort of comment on a little bit broadly. But yeah, I'd like to see them return to it thematically.
Yeah. So yeah, that was that combined with the fact that we got new shades of the characters, that it was Bloimler.
You'll get it by the. Don't sweat it. You'll get it by the end of the.
That he was the one who actually was able to make the leap between these two worlds, the world of I don't know. I don't want to say the slackers, because they were actually the ship seemed to be running well enough, but
the peons.
The world of the let us make our own decisions about how to do our jobs best, and the world of micromanaging, and yeah, you pointed out that maybe it's about doing too much work and assigning too much work, but I think it's also just about how you assign that work. Do you give broad goals, or do you precisely outline every little step that your subordinates have to jump through? It's some of the actual command style is part of the issue. So yeah, sorry. I just was very fascinated by that, and the fact that they'd done that.
And I wasn't expecting Boimler to have, after the first 2 episodes, I wasn't expecting him to have like a big win like this, where like everyone on the bridge is celebrating him in the 3rd episode.
Yeah.
He has like this one moment where it's like a close up of him, and he's like the most ridiculous, like dorky smile. It made me feel happy for him.
Yeah, and he totally owns it. It's not a fake success like the last episode, or an accidental success like the goo on his body.
Success that he doesn't want, in a way.
Well,
he didn't want to, like, the way it was remembered, but I think he's still happy for the victory.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that his own neurosis.
Yeah.
Is that the word I'm looking for?
His neuroses, his
own neurosisness, his own neuroticness, kind of like makes him trip over his big day at the end.
Yeah, that does completely.
He's worried about how he's going to be remembered.
Yeah,
they clean up the ship. They get the correct totem to the crystal people, and we get Mariner and Dr. Tiana in sickbay. This line made me laugh out loud, where she's like, "You want me to do something about that scar?" And she's like, "No, I like keeping my scars. They're my trophies." And Dr. Tiana is like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. You look like a fucking scratching ghost."
I laughed so hard over that. That was amazing.
I like that they bleep her F-bombs. It makes it funnier. Like, I know like Picard and Disco drop F-bombs, but like if you're doing it for comedic purposes, it is funnier to hear it bleeped out like that.
Well, there's also this weird it's a cartoon, so it's for kids, but maybe not, we're not sure.
I've sometimes seen it where I think it's a little bit funnier when they don't edit it, but there's kind of an art to it, and sometimes when stuff is bleeped, it absolutely is funnier.
Yeah. I also like that Mariner apologizes.
Did she apologize?
Huh?
Did she apologize to what's his face?
Ransom.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's so much as an apology, but she was like, she forgave him for like stabbing her in the foot. She's like, "I'm not going to report," because he's nervous. He thinks he's going to get court-martialed. And he's very career-oriented. Rank means everything always. But here, like, she's like, "No, I'm actually not I'm not gonna tell on you. And I thought you were really cool." And you think they're going to kiss each other. And instead
he's like, "Book 'em, boys."
And she's getting hauled off to the brig because she didn't roll her sleeves down.
Yes.
Who's that purple alien?
It's the Purple Man from Marvel Comics. He fights Daredevil. Well, I'm not going to talk about the other stuff he does, but
So, yeah, and I was kind of okay with her getting hauled off because I still think she needs to be taken down a few pegs, but I saw there was progress. There was like, okay, there's hope for Mariner. There could be a real good officer under all of that.
If she never gets thrown into the brig, it would like start getting repetitive. So they needed to do that. I love that she threw a bedpan at him because that's just visually funny.
I hadn't caught that, but you're right.
Botrek says she wanted the D, but got the shaft.
Well said, sir. Well said.
That's a lovely phrasing on that.
But this confirms also that Ransom has the hots for Mariner, where he's like, oh, that was kind of hot.
Yeah.
So
like
I guess
said, I did kind of enjoy seeing the different pairings and just seeing, I'm sure we'll see many more to come and to see how the different chemistry goes with different crew members.
Yeah, I don't want the show to constantly be like Mariner and Boimler go to a planet. Boimler's an idiot. Mariner's a badass, and then meanwhile, Tendi and Rutherford are being cute together on the ship. Like I don't want it to be just constantly that, repetitively that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they shook it up. I'm glad that they're using the higher ranking officers too. Like from time to time, they should. Much like how, say, Next Generation, sometimes, O'Brien would get a lot of spotlight in an episode. It's like, oh, his old ship, the Rutledge, and Captain Maxwell is going crazy fighting Cardassians, and we get to shine a light on O'Brien for a little bit. I like that Laura in the reverse.
Speaking of O'Brien.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Boimler basically gets told by the captain that he is now responsible for the Boimler effect, which is essentially a rule encouraging shortcuts and not blindly following rules. And he's like, oh no, I love following rules.
This was the classic sort of Brian Swift role-playing game master maneuver, by the way. I do this kind of stuff to my players all the time. Oh, that's what you want? Here you go. But I always do it in such a way that they're like, oh, that's not, it's what I wanted, but it's not what I wanted.
You monkey paw it.
Yes. I do that all the time in my games, and I was loving how that played out. That was so beautiful.
Yeah, he gets like the plaque of the Boimler effect, and they do like the kind of smash cutty type of humor where like you cut from one thing to like a completely different scene that's directly reacting to it, or I guess indirectly reacting to it. But when Rutherford's like, oh, don't worry, I'm sure no one's going to remember this. They make up rules all the time. It'll be forgotten. And then we cut to the far future. This teacher teaching some students in this weird futuristic classroom. And she's like, which is why the Boimler effect is something we will never forget. So named after the laziest, most corner-cutting officer in Starfleet history, Brad Boimler.
Yes. It was brilliant.
But the joke that I loved, because they tee it up so well when the teacher is saying, and now let's move on to the most important person in Starfleet history. And when she says that, everyone watching is going to lean in and sit on the front end of their seat, on the edge of their seat. Like, oh, who's it going to be? Like, is it going to be Kirk? Is it going to be Picard? Is it going to be Sisko? And it is Chief Miles O'Brien. That is canonical. He is the most important person in Starfleet history. Just confirms something that anyone who actually pays attention to Star Trek would have known all along. And it is irrefutable. You cannot dispute it.
It's canon now.
But no, like this is also silly. Like this could be. They keep it vague. This could be like 1,000 years in the future. It could be 1,000,000 billion years in the future. The entire universe could have been apocalypsed, and like refugees from a parallel universe come over and they find some old captain's log, and that's how they learn the names Boimler and O'Brien, and this is all just like a weird history based on inaccurate shit. Like this could basically be anything, whatever you want it to be. It's harmless. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't affect anything.
How dare they spit on Picard like that?
No, I like it being O'Brien. He was a Union man.
Yeah, and he's a Lower Decks guy, and this is the Lower Decks cartoon. So of course, the Lower Decks future has O'Brien as the god. So.
It could only have been O'Brien or Barclay.
Oh,
I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. Those are the only two I feel like it could have been.
yeah. But Barkley, they've done so much. Oh, Barkley looks lame, but he's actually awesome. That I think it works better as O'Brien because there's more of an everyman about him.
It's funny because they kind of use the kind of the image from the O'Brien at Work webcomic, which is kind of lame and like makes him out to be like this big doofus. When if you watch Deep Space Nine, he's actually a pretty
it's almost like the comic. I've laughed at the comic before, but it seems like more of a spoof of his role on TNG.
Yeah.
Right, and I like this is kind of like a fuck you to the comic. Like you think this guy is some lame ass? Like no, he's the biggest badass of the franchise.
I have no doubt that the person who makes that comic thought this scene was awesome, assuming they have CBS All Access. So.
We do have some Gorn eggs to go through where we like to point out all the Easter eggs, in-jokes, and continuity connections in the episodes. We are getting a little low on time, so I'm going to try to go through these very quickly. But starting off, we see a traditional Klingon bird of prey. For the first time on screen since probably Deep Space Nine went off the air. So that was cool to see. And it's also like positioned up against the Cerritos, just like the first Klingon bird of prey we ever saw, that Star Trek 3 against the Enterprise.
Yeah, I noticed that framing very clearly.
What you would call like the gunslinger showdown in Star Trek terms.
Yeah.
The Cerritos was on its way to Cardassia Prime in the opening of the episode. That is the homeworld of the Cardassian people that we visit multiple times in Deep Space Nine. Also, aboard the bridge of the Cerritos, we do see a alien tactical officer. And I could be wrong, but I think I recognized her species as being the Helian, I think is how you say it, from that episode, Aquiel of Next Generation. I really don't like that episode. The only thing I like about that character is that she worked at Relay Station 47. And the buffer time that is kind of the core of this episode's story, of course, comes from Scotty and the episode Relics. Scotty being the king of buffer time because he spent 8 decades in a transporter buffer. So he really took that seriously. As we pointed out, Boimler was humming the TNG theme in the Turbo Lift. I just want to say here, because I haven't commented on it yet, but the theme that they play during the title sequence actually borrows some notes from the original series, Next Generation, and the animated series. Which I love the musical connections in Star Trek. Star Trek's been kind of like inconsistent with its scores over the years, so I like when they tried to add a musical continuity to it. And he's talking to the captain about how he completed the Barian sweep, like from Starship Mine.
Yeah, and it didn't kill everyone.
Did he say it? Well, no, he said he did it to the nacelles. So you'd think there's just no one in the nacelles.
What's it a reference to?
That episode where it's basically Die Hard on the Enterprise, the ship is getting a baryon or bar. I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
I want to say baryon, but
basically they have to remove all these particles that the ship collects over time, and everyone has to get off the ship for it to be like cleaned. And that's when terrorists come to take over, and Picard has to fight them.
Yeah, and he hits somebody with a saddle.
Yes, I like that episode. It's action hero Picard.
Yeah.
When the captain sends out the new orders about putting an end to the what did you call it? The temporal deceit. Mariner is like, who ratted this out? It must have been Delta Shift. Delta Shift being a callback to Chain of Command when Jellicoe took over the Enterprise, and this is kind of a this whole episode is kind of a Jellicoe tribute when you're having to work for an asshole on a starship.
Delta Shift sounds like, for people who've watched Cheers, they're the Gary's Old Town Tavern to the lower decks losers that are Cheers.
When Boimler is gleefully purging the calibration matrix, he's singing this purge song, a lot like Data's Scanning for Life Forms song from Star Trek Generations.
Yeah, I saw some of our commenters mentioning that for sure.
life forms. Ransom, of course, does the Riker lean, or whatever you want to call it, the Riker position.
Sorry, the picture you put up was amazing.
And he makes references to an away mission could go wrong. You could meet a horned gorilla. Of course, that is referring to the Magato from the TOS episode, A Private Little War. He also mentioned sentient tar, like Armis from Skin of Evil, that killed Tasha Yar. And spores that make you hook up with your best friend's sister, which I believe is referring to these spores from this side of paradise. Basically, a plant shot spores all over Spock, and he got high on the spores and got real horny. Mariner points out, we live on a spaceship, no one's going to die of a spear wound. But I thought of 2 times in Star Trek history where someone did die of a spear wound. One was in Galileo 7, and the other one might be a bit of a stretch, but Space Lincoln in the Savage was actually speared in the back and died.
I think those are nice calls, Fatheree. That's well done.
When they're being overworked on the ship, Tindy says that she doesn't even know what deck sickbay is on, and she thinks it's deck 26. And Rutherford says, does the ship even have 26 decks or something like that? This was hilarious to me because in the movie, this is like the deepest cut they've ever done. But in the movie Star Trek First Contact, a lieutenant mentions deck 26. The Enterprise E, the Sovereign class Enterprise from Star Trek First Contact, only has 24 decks. There is no 26th deck.
Oh, wow. Oh,
so,
wow.
I mean, that was like an error in that movie, and I love like this little wink at it.
That is deep.
All these clocks counting down. I kept waiting to see one that displayed 47, the magical Star Trek number, and they would always be at like 50, 49, 40, and then it would cut away. like one would show up and
tempting you, Fatheree.
It'd be like 45, 44. I'm like, oh, we just missed it. And then there's actually 2 47s, and they're both at like really important parts of the story. There's one right before Boimler phasers all those guys in the corridor. And then there's an other one right after he convinces the captain to ease up on the crew. So they're both like when Boimler is having like his big moments is when there's a 47 on screen. So I like that they saved it for like special things. Like the attention to detail in this show is amazing for people who care about this type of stuff.
So yeah, I guess that's how he summons his mojo, his 47s. 47s make him strong, and they're like his spinach to his Popeye or whatever.
Maybe. When Mariner is showing off all of her scars, which when she's like taking her shirt off, that might have been the moment that like Ransom developed his attraction to her. But she says one of the scars is from Magus 3. That planet has only been mentioned one other time in Star Trek, I believe. That is where Guinan picked up that big badass gun that she had in, I think, Night Terrors, the one in the Circles episode. Yeah, but she had like that gun under the bar counter for if the crowd got too rowdy, she could simmer them down.
Yes, the episode where you find out Whoopi Goldberg has no clue how to hold a gun.
That's how you hold that gun, Brian. That particular gun.
The biggest 3 guns, duh. The fight, the trial by combat was just pure like TOS goodness. Like shirtless Ransom, he's like shiny, like when Shatner would be like oiled up in the original series. But also like the double fist punch, the move that Kirk used on the Gorn, he used it on Khan, he used it on an Orion that was disguised as an Andorian. And they even had like the fight music from originally heard in Amok Time. And the Boimler Effect Award that was presented to Ensign Brad Boimler was printed on a dedication plaque that we saw a lot in Berman-era Star Trek, that Mike Okuda design that was first introduced in Star Trek The Next Generation. But basically every Starfleet ship in TNG, DS9, Voyager would have this style dedication plaque.
I thought it was odd that they chose the old 23rd century logo for the plaque.
I did too, but that's kind of closer to what they have for their Delta in this show. So, there was mention of a great bird of the galaxy at the classroom at the end. Of course, that's the nickname given to Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry. And also, some of these students, I really like this. I thought this was really cool. There is like some Ferengi and Endurian, Acacian, but there is a Borg kid. And I just love the idea that like at some point in the future, I know it undermines the original intent of the Borg, that they're like the one big, scary, unstoppable evil in the Star Trek universe. But I love the idea that at some point we'll still learn to be friends with them. And maybe like somehow like the Borg will reproduce through children and they're like, yeah, we're Borg, but we're friendly. And like our kids go to school with your kids. I like that. It made me happy.
Or maybe people choose to be Borg.
No, it's optional. And then, of course, the greatest Starfleet officer of all time, Chief Miles O'Brien, the hero of the franchise. Those are all the things that I caught, though. If I missed anything, you should let me know that you're more observant than I am, and I'll give you a shout out next week when we discuss episode 4.
Fatheree, you'll have to. I saw in our comments that Boat Trek mentioned asking about a TOS style, or not TOS, but a motion picture style Klingon. And I think I saw the one that he was referring to on the bridge, maybe at some point. But
well, the only Klingon in the episode is the one from the beginning.
I thought there was one later. Anyway, I mentioned it to look into, perhaps. I trust him more than I trust myself on it.
All right. Any other comments from our live audience that you want to share?
Let's see. Somebody, Starfleet Boy, wondered if from that opening number, if that counted as metal, like as in heavy metal, metal's first appearance in Star Trek. And also asks if any of us are metal fans. I will answer that. Fatheree is. I don't think Brian necessarily is, and I'm a dabbler at best. But yeah, has metal shown up in Star Trek in any way before?
Magic's Omegas 2 is the most metal thing I've ever seen in my life.
That doesn't have music.
It's not the most metal
yeah.
thing you. It's not the most metal thing you have ever heard in your life.
But yeah, I mean, some of the Klingon opera, the music in Suddenly Human. Metal has been teased in Star Trek. I'll say.
But I don't think we've ever like heard it per se. And I guess I feel like that was like what Mariner was playing was a little bit more like, kind of garage rock kind of style. But Starfleet Boy also was just pointing out that the high quality animation of the episode, he was specifically highlighting the scene where Mariner and what's the name of the guy she's got the crush on? Ransom are talking, and he's talking, and I think it was after he had stabbed her, but he was talking about there was foreground blur, depth of field, and lighting and particle effects. So just a shout out to the technical quality of the animation. And the Stress-Free K mentioned that Lower Decks is starting a whole new genre of franchises that satirize themselves, which I thought was an interesting way to look at this. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I can't think of too many other examples. Galaxy Quest arguably did it first, but that wasn't officially Star Trek.
That's the unofficial Star Trek movie.
Yes.
There was one other exchange. I'll just quick mention that between Starfleet Boy and Stress VK. Starfleet Boy asked if Boimler, if anybody thought Boimler had feelings for Mariner, and Stress Free K says, I don't think Boimler is in touch with his sexuality so far. And that, other than like trying to impress Tendi when she first showed up, that does kind of seem to be the case. That he doesn't. I'm not going to say, oh, he's asexual, but it doesn't seem like a big thing.
We saw him get seduced in Little Ryza last week.
That's true.
By the creature that wanted to lay eggs in his throat.
Yeah,
I'll say this. I don't want to spoil it for people who don't want to know, but if you watch the San Diego Comic-Con panel on Lower Decks, they do discuss something about Boimler's romantic life that will be in a future episode. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go check it out there.
Mugato stuff. I hope.
Don't
Oh,
kink
dear.
shame.
Anyway, that's all I got for comments. Just a few I'd plucked out of the responses today.
Cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off then. But right now, Starfleet Boy is going to be streaming Starfleet Boy After Dark. Everyone should totally go check that out if you're with us live now and you want to stay up and hang out. And next week, we'll be back at the same time, 7:30 Central Friday, to discuss Star Trek Lower Decks Episode 4, which I believe is strangely titled Moist Vessel. We'll see what that's
People love the word moist.
I thought
I've learned
Temporal Edict was going to be about Temporal Edict was going to be about time travel, and I was kind of sad that it wasn't because I love the time travel, but I know a lot of people hate it. So
They'll get to time travel. Just give them time; it will happen. No comedy sci-fi series can resist time travel for long.
well, but until next week, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.